The reason why we have the MPIs is because good marketing spend will always result in good revenue lift. But if you have bad marketing spend, it will result obviously in no revenue or lead lift, regardless in both scenarios what Google says. So that's a good way of saying if I'm going to be putting another dollar in on this end, I better see at least another $1 or $2 come out the other side. It's the easiest way to measure a business.
Today, we're talking about some really seriously cool shit. And this is something that we've referenced, we've talked a little bit about, but I think it's one of the coolest things that you do. And there's a lot of cool things that you do. But first off, this is one of the cooler things because it's on a platform that nobody really knows how to get performance out of this platform. And the platform we're going to be talking about today is YouTube. And I call it sequencing. What do you call it? Do you call it?
It's actually just the sequencing. Yeah, that's actually what Google calls it.
Okay.
And I think I also wanted this episode to kind of be about like the how it works, how to set it up, what to look for, how to optimize, where to find the pitfalls, etc. And also what you're not going to see, like conversions, which is actually the reason why this is not a well-known type of campaign, is because so many people are used to looking at in-app and be like, I don't see my $2 CPA. Where is it? Right. But it's more of a TV commercial. It's more like a meta ad. Like everyone's really happy on like 1x meta ad return. It actually does really well because people, don't really click that much. It's the same thing on YouTube, even more. People click on YouTube ads less than meta ads, but it doesn't mean that it's not actually having an impact. So the reason why I wanted to make this campaign a center focus today is because with demand gen, that is basically, has now overtaken the Google Ads ecosystem for all things YouTube. People have kind of forgotten about that you can still set up YouTube outside of demand gen, and you can still set them up in ways that are very beneficial to the top line metrics of your business. But it's people, I think, are so ingrained in using the YouTube ads as a conversion engine or as a conversion campaign that they're like, well, if you want to go to YouTube and get the conversions attributed to YouTube, you got to use demand gen now, which is true. If you want to run a video ads a video action campaign on videos, you have to use demand gen now. But all of the good marketing that is good for your business that doesn't attribute inside they're still there and they still work well. And today we're going to be discussing kind of how to run them, how to optimize them, what to look for, that kind of stuff. Because I think that I've been using them more and more and more because demand gen has become, increasingly warm until, we've solved that with first party data imports, but not everyone's on first party data imports. And this doesn't actually get steered away by not seeing conversions because it's not using a conversion-based bidding strategy. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the big question is, I think the recommendation on YouTube is I always sort of say, well, you can't really see much of an impact unless you spend a fair amount, which is at least like 10K per month, which is a benchmark I think you still use sort of as a general rule of thumb. Yeah. But still, you don't see the conversions in there, so you don't really know if it's working. And I think you do have to have some kind of multi-channel to be able to, or multi-channel view to be able to determine whether or not that is having an effect. And all things being equal, if you double your YouTube ad spend and you see it coming out the other end, maybe on your Amazon and maybe on your Google search or your Google brand, or, maybe even some on email to a certain degree on retargeting, like you need to be able to sort of look at it in a holistic way. And that's like the missing piece here is because YouTube doesn't have a click unless 99, what percentage of cases does it have a click?
Well, your average click-through rate's like kind of 0.5%. So if you impress 100 people, you might get a data point on maybe one of them.
Maybe one. Yeah. So I wonder why people even use it to begin with, because they don't really understand any of this. What I mean?
And that's what's interesting is like the reason why we have the MPIs is because good marketing spend will always result in good revenue lift. But if you have bad marketing spend, it will result obviously in no revenue or lead lift, regardless in both scenarios what Google says. And so that's a good way of saying, if I'm going to be putting another dollar in on this end, I better see at least another $1 or $2 come out the other side. It's the easiest way to measure a business because it's obviously the only thing that's going to keep it afloat. So that's what's interesting is I think that the industry has been slapped around by uneducated clients for so long that unless they see a Forex, inside of a campaign like brand does, don't run it. And that's a limitation of thinking that keeps small businesses small.
Well, I mean, if Meta is like that, YouTube is even worse.
Yeah.
And I mean, we still see a ton of YouTube advertisers. Obviously, I watch YouTube all the time. Yeah. And I know they're not getting a click, but they're just getting an impression. And in a general way, like, you have to look at that as your overall MER. Like, there's no real way to say, okay, YouTube is the thing that's driving it, unless you all of a sudden, your credit card doesn't work one day and all of a sudden all your sales go down. Like, that's the only way. Like, when we've seen that plenty of times on all platforms, YouTube is no exception.
Exactly. Every platform is no exception. Even, and when I say every platform, I mean TV commercials, billboards, and direct mail, and a Super Bowl ad. They all don't have click attributed ROAS, but everyone still runs them, and they're still half the size of, or competing of equal size of digital. Yeah, it's losing market share. Sometimes it makes a comeback. Let's kind of dive right in too.
Yeah, let's get into it.
This is a company that works with a lot of higher end individuals. They're looking for a reputation management company. So this is if you have anything that you need to obviously look and smell and feel better on Google when people Google your name. This is a company that handles reputation management. So it is sometimes a difficult industry to be in because they're longer sales cycle. They take a while to drip because a lot of times reputation management is not necessarily something that you think about as a solve for it. Usually it's like, well, let's do SEO. Let's sue these people that have a bad article about me, yada, yada, yada. So there is a longer sales cycle and it's fairly expensive, and it's usually an individual. It's not necessarily a company. So it is a difficult scale. So one of the ways that we came up with basically being able to conceptualize a story and to deliver it to a user kind of forcefully is we created an 8 impression step campaign. And an 8 impression campaign mean that you are going to need to see every single one of these videos before you're done with the sequence. And regardless of what you do, watch, skip, or which is pretty much the only thing you could do, as long as you're impressed by that ad, even if you skipped, you're then pushed into the sequence of next. And what this means is that our step sequence, you have different choices that you can do step sequences. The first step sequence, you can even say, well, if you're going to be impressed by an ad, or if you view an ad, which means watch longer than 10 seconds, or if you skip an ad, I get to decide if you go like this path or that path, or I can get to choose the paths. This is a path for a high amount of frequency. And the high amount of frequency means that if you see higher frequency and success inside of Meta, where you're like, hey, once I get over that 2 or 3 or 4 weekly frequency, we start to see that our middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel engagement is better, and we start to see that our top of funnel ad spend is spending more. So you're kind of seeing a little bit of a pipeline. What's really terrible about YouTube is it has a very, very, very low frequency. The frequency is usually about 1.4. on average. And and YouTube doesn't need to be high because it is going to live and die by omni-channel traffic. I'm going to be using this tool here for a minute because I have a client that's still running it. They're actually onboarding right now on Data Suite, which is pretty cool. So this is a company that was on this platform. So I'm going to use their old data. But one of the reasons why they're no longer using this particular platform is because we see that when running a YouTube ads campaign.
Don't forget to export your Northbeam data.
Hey. Well, maybe not even important.
It's debatable.
So
anyway,
looking at this, so here's what Google does on a YouTube ad for video action campaigns. And this is demand gen. So video action campaigns are where you have your I think it was it February? Was it this time period or was it January? I think it might have been January. Yeah, it was this time period here. So here's what's interesting. On first touch, YouTube should not have the same spend and lose half its revenue because Facebook was pulled back. That should not be a thing on first touch. First touch means doesn't matter what happens to Facebook spend. This would always be, static. It's first touch, right? It shouldn't be touching anybody that's on the website and remarketing to them. But we see that way too often. And our first little test here was when we pulled out about $50,000 in weekly spend from Facebook. This thing, lost 50% of its revenue and didn't really react to it. The week after that, in January, when we did the next week, 15th to the 21st, compared to the 8th and 24th, we see that we actually piped in 30% more. Again, YouTube didn't react to it from spend, but it magically got 42% more revenue, first touch. Also with 43% less new visits. So how does that happen? That's not a statistical factor. It's mathematically incorrect if this is first touch, because first touch would have given all of this revenue back to the channel that it earned. So we can see that either A, platform is not necessarily always first touch, which is actually also the case. But what that means that has to be true is that YouTube does remarketing on video action campaigns. We already know this. Like, as you can see, there's already 300 people here that have already been on the site first touch. So it's definitely not working well. The last fun thing is, like, my always question was, how do you have first touch revenue from Klaviyo? You can't have email first touch. It's not a thing. Unless you're buying lists. So all of this data basically just proves that when you actually see the truth, which is, yes, it goes warm at retargets, that's the issue. Why did I bring that up? I brought that up because when you have a frequency of 1.5, you don't have to try to generate interest in order to attribute a conversion. Low frequency, low impression campaigns can simply be like, Ralph's about to buy today. Show Ralph an ad, I win. I don't have to actually take Ralph who's cold, tell a story, warm Ralph up, and get them to want to buy. I simply say, thank God there's someone here that came from Facebook. I'll also attribute it to myself. And that's what a video action campaign does. And that's why measuring by ROAS, a lot of times you're 50% off, even on a third-party platform, even on first touch. It's worse when you're actually inside of Google. It attributes even more after you try to remove all the stuff that it is already attributed. This is a campaign that will do just that, which is high frequency, targeted audience, a campaign that can be have control over how to tell the story and get a visual feedback about how people are understanding the story. So as a quick example, we've been running this thing since the 10th, so it's not been very long. But watch this. What we did is look at the engagement by the sequence. We know that step 5, we see actually click-through rate fall off. We know that step 6, we have click-through rate that's actually not very good. We see that on step 8, it is actually horribly abysmal. And there's a good amount of ad spend here. Nothing worse than the 48 that's getting us 0.63. So when you're looking at your sequencing, what we're trying to identify is, theoretically, the more that a person is going down the path sequence, the higher their click-through rate should be. And it should look like this: kind of interested, getting more and more interested. That would mean that this is a good sequence. Yeah. So the first step in running a sequencing ad is, am I telling the story in the right path? One way to do that after you start your campaigns is look through like a halfway point. What a halfway point means is, if I take this thing and say, well, what's the last 7 days compared to the previous 7 days? We know that we're getting fairly poor and diminishing returns in our click-through rate from these ads here. So we ended up just simply pausing those ads in the sequence. We say, okay, they're going through the sequence well, but as soon as they see this ad, we kind of lose them. And then everything else from there kind of has poor performance, except for maybe 1 or 2 other videos. So you start to actually reduce the sequence of good videos versus bad videos, and you're using that off of click-through rate. And as some time goes on, you can kind of see now, if we look at the last 7 days compared to the previous 7 days, it's 0.5. And then they may jump to the second one and goes 0.38, 0.46, 0.57, 0.76. Good. This is starting to increase the further that they go down the funnel, which means after we've taken out those bad sequences, you can see that now I've shortened it from 8 down to 5. And now the sequence is making a lot more sense to people. We're educating them correctly. They're starting to have more interest the further that they go down.
Should it be linear like that? Should it be smallest to largest? Or that's sort of your benchmark that you're using here. But
I would expect it. Yeah. If I show you 5 ads, at the end of it, you should not be wanting it less. You should be wanting it more.
Okay.
And so that was my thing, not the thought
And click-through
process.
rate is the only way in which you can measure that. We're not talking about view times here or anything like that. I would figure you would use view time.
Well, you can use view times, but
Okay.
the one thing that's bad about view times is I can still get the message across in 20 seconds that I may have needed, 10 seconds or took 50 seconds to get. But if the hook for them to take an action, which is the reason why we don't really look at video, or we don't look at view engaged conversions, we want to see, like, if I get a conversion of like person requesting a call for a discovery based on a click, I should see my ad event type is not an engaged view conversion. That's a click. So someone clicked and said, "Okay, I'm interested after watching the first and second one." Good. That's the feedback that we're starting to get. So we don't really track a lot of conversions in these campaigns, but while we have to look at them is inferring them by the click-through rate. I have a lot more data for these video action campaigns off of imports and even inside of Data Suite. The problem is we don't really have clients that are also on Data Suite and using video action video sequencing campaigns just quite yet. So that's something that we're going to try to push into so we can have kind of both. So as of right now, we're looking at more on the click-through rate side and engagement. It should be measured by overall lead flow, overall lead quality, and then cost per new quality lead. Because if this is working well, I should start seeing more leads, and we are. And I'll show you also another thing that I've had. This is a consulting client. I had them do this week so that we can check in the data the next week, which is it ties it all together, which we'll go through soon. So we're looking at the click-through rate starting to increase. This is kind of the goal. It should not say, I saw the first one and it was great, and then I saw everything else and I hate it all. Like, we should see a gradual increase in click-through rate the further they go down the funnel. We should not see where we look at the pause ones where it's like 0.38, 0.46, 0.57, 0.2, and down 37%. Like, we should not see that.
Why you should choose us doesn't really cut it.
Exactly. That's kind of it sounds about right. I'm good, and here's why I'm good. That doesn't help me. So maybe it should be more about them. So we're interpreting the creative and based on the feedback. I got them interested and I lost more than half the people. I lost 2/3 of my engagement on video number 5. Let's remove that for right now while we re-strategize.
So in these campaigns, can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
So on these campaigns, on the video sequence, it's basically video sequence. Well, let's look at the next one. What is ORM? Is that like video number 3 or it's a different sequence with different videos? Explain to me like what each video is in each sequence. It's the same one as this.
So this is like the video sequence. This video is like, what is ORM? This one is like this, what service we offer. This one that we paused is why choose us. The one that we also paused is social proof. The one that says, why should I care? Actually was a lot better than why should I care about you? This one's working well. So this is why it's like the why is it important to me? And then this is actually the one that people are actually taking action on. So why should I care is much better. So what iteration will we do next? Maybe I would actually open with why should I care?
Yeah, that was my next question. Like if you're getting a really high click-through rate, or high relatively speaking, because 0.78 ain't exactly earth-shattering here, but on YouTube, pretty damn good.
It's 50% higher than the average.
Yeah, but changing the sequence to be able to put the good stuff up front. But then again, it might just be the result of the fact that it's good in the sequence where it actually sits, as opposed to it being the top of the funnel.
Right.
So what would your recommendation be here? Like, you're looking for the one that really has a big drop off. That's the first thing, which is the one that is, I forget which one.
Why choose us?
Why choose us?
Or it's exactly. So there's 2 schools of thought here, and that's what we have to test both. Is A, did you actually click the why should I care because you know what I'm talking about, or because it was a powerful video? If I saw this first, would I even care because it's first? Or do I now care because I've gone through the sequence? Those are things we have to test.
That's what I asked, right?
Exactly. So it could be that if we put the why should I care first, would that actually have a low click-through rate?
Oh.
So because it's like, hi, I'm the reputation management. Why should you care? It's like, what's reputation management? So that's the thing, is like, we have to develop the narrative of the story that actually can a lot of times be used inside of sales. The salesperson is like, if your company has a salesperson, what are some objections that they have to overcome each time? That's a video sequence. You're warming up now the traffic. You're removing those barriers before the sales team actually starts to enact with them by saying, here's who we are. This is why it works. This is why what you're doing does not. So all of those things that you're telling a story, you get to conceptualize into a narrative that typically you do not have control over. Hopefully that ad set works. Hopefully YouTube pushes ad spend there. Hopefully the percentage served is higher. This allows you to craft that narrative. And also pay really nice and happy CPMs for it, and then see where the drop off is increasing or decreasing.
Right.
The other thing that you would have to look at when you're talking about engagement is, because this is not a video conversion action campaign, it's not an action campaign, it is actually not really susceptible to spam. A lot of times spam, and one of the things that we always do is go through the entire campaign on the insights, the where ads showed, and then look at the where ads showed and then sort descending by click-through rate. What you'll find is a lot of times you'll have someone that says, yeah, I saw, I was impressed one time. I saw the ad one time. I clicked 3 times. So these are your spams. So when you look at things that are not necessarily like English speaking or placements, even though the campaign setting is set to English, Google doesn't care. So you still have to have that manual intervention where if this was a video action campaign, you'd have 1 click, 1 view, and 126, or 1 impression, 1 view, and 126 clicks, because YouTube is going to start showing the ad to where the engagement comes into more often.
Right.
So this doesn't really necessarily have that. So it's not as susceptible to spam, but you do have to go into your placements that are having the spam and essentially go ahead and exclude those locations from the campaign. That is something that has to be watched very frequently, because you should never have more than 100% click-through rate on an individual channel for an individual person.
You're pulling out the weeds.
Exactly. So this is kind of something that we do quite often, which is why we're not getting spam, but we did get a little bit amount of spam this last week. So I was like, well, I'll show it on the Friday Live just for a use case, because this thing can really eat into your budget very quickly, and you get all excited because you got more clicks, lower CPC.
If it's not watched, right?
Exactly. So that's why that's why click-through rate is always a really good indicator is this going to be useful? Is it something that is going to help my brand? Now, the flip side to this, which is I don't have the data to support yet, but I do have the data to show in terms of the brand campaign, which is, why am I going blank? Better, there it is. So inside of the brand campaign, what you want to do is set up a new audience. The new audience, where it's populating right now. That's why it's not eligible, because it's too small. This is something that was just installed yesterday afternoon, so we'll need a couple days for it to fill up. But what you can do is actually go in and create. Let me go into the creation portion of this. You can go in and create an audience. This audience,
the people who watch the Who Is ORM video, perhaps.
It could be. So that's what's nice is you can actually, we don't have a customer type, but what we did right now is we're filling up a general audience of the action.
Everybody watched.
View any video as an ad in the past 30 days. We did backfill it as well. Okay. And so this is something that we'll pipe back in. But now this ad viewer in the last 30 days is added as an observation audience inside of your brand campaign. So this way, what we can look at is our audiences. Let me go back to here. Just where's my campaigns? There we go, campaigns, and then go into the brand, and then go into the audiences, and go into the audience segments. Now with this observation setting, what we'll be able to see is if someone Googled the brand name, were they also found in the audience of people who watched an ad in the last 30 days? Because that will be a different segment than everybody else in the campaign. So as of right now, we know we have 122 clicks and no one was found in the audience, obviously, because the audience is built brand new yesterday. So it's populating and it's learning, and it's that's the technical term, is populating. But now we'll be able to say out of 122 clicks, 18 of those people were actually people who watched my video as an ad, then Googled my brand. And I can compare the people who are just normally converting versus the people who've watched an ad and converted, and get the metrics on those. What's cost per conversion? What's conversion rate? All those things there. Are we making an impact off of the people who saw our ad versus all the other omnichannel marketing, including inbound non-brand search and Meta, to say, okay, these are people who have watched an ad and then Googled. Those people come in X amount cheaper, more plentiful, higher click-through rates, etc., and maybe also potentially with an import.
Mhm.
the people that are, quality versus non-quality leads.
Mhm.